Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to, it's not an emergency podcast because we pre-planned it, but we knew that we were going to have to do it. We're doing our trade deadline recap for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And if there's time, we will go over some other moves that we saw and kind of give our thoughts there. You'll notice that the group's a little bit different today. We do have Preston here from AZ Snake Pit. We do appreciate you for stopping in. If this is everyone's first time joining us here on Dbacks Dispatch, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos. We do series recaps for every series, so make sure to check that out. You obviously know Gabe here and then Preston. But we're just going to jump into it here real quick. Dbacks kind of got the trade deadline started a little bit early. A couple of days ago, they acquired AJ Puck from the Miami Marlins. And we've seen him pitch a couple of times here. So I just want to get Preston, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about getting Puck, and what do you think? How do you think he's looked so far?
I think my initial thought was that it was a little bit of an overpay. I'm always a little bit nervous when it comes to trading for relievers just being so volatile. Having seen him pitch, obviously he's performed great. And you can't really ask for more. And, it's just one of those things that we'll just kind of have to see how it works out in the long run. I do think it was interesting that, we traded primarily for relievers, and it was a reliever that really got the one prospect that everybody knows.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've been very impressed with, I think he's pitched 2 games so far. He's looked dynamite. And Gabe has said it numerous times. The fact that Joe Mantiply was our only lefty scared us to death because he's very hot and cold. And if this team was trying to rely on him as our only lefty, that I know for me, that had me nervous. So my one, and I was pushing for it a lot, was Matt Moore from the Angels, I felt was gettable. Obviously, Brett was huge on Tanner Scott. Brett wanted Tanner Scott bad. We got a lefty. So I've been impressed with Puck. So he's tall. He's very tall. He's not a crafty lefty, ladies and gentlemen. He has a very good fastball and slider. And trying to hit that slider, if you're a left-hander, it's like coming from behind you and sweeps all the way across. Good luck. So, Gabe, what are your thoughts on how Puck has looked so far in his first couple of games?
So the main thing that stands out to me is just the fact that he can get righties out. He's faced a few righties already, and he's been dominating them. He's been pitching inside, something that Mantiply can't do, something that, even some of our right-handed relievers, they just can't attack inside the zone the way he was doing. He got a guy just straight up looking at his fastball, and it's a nasty fastball. It's an FU fastball and FU slider. He's looked really, really impressive so far. And when we've talked about it, sure, it hurts to let go of Davison, but Davison, he's kind of, he didn't really have a real place here just because of his defense. And this team prides itself on defense. And as of right now, we have 2 proven DHs with Jock and Newman, Grichuk. We have 3 guys right there that we can use as DH, that we can platoon that spot, especially, if we need to give Cattell a day off, we can put him as a DH. That DH spot is too valuable to give it to, Davison. The only other spot for him would be third base, but with Gino coming around and again his defense being a problem, he just didn't have a place so far. And if that was the asking price for a guy who's very good, who's a very hard throwing lefty, and he's an immediate need for now. Davison is not an immediate need for now, and who knows about next year? I mean, we have Puck for next year as well, so I really do like the move, and I thought we needed one more, and it seems like we got one more with the Floro.
Yeah, that's one thing with Hazen that I've noticed is if he makes a trade deadline deal, he wants he doesn't want a rental. He doesn't want a 3-month rental. He wants someone with control, which we saw with Seawold last year and Puck this year. So been very impressed. Preston, what were your thoughts on the fact that they did? It seemed like they sold very high on De Los Santos. Do you think he would have ever seen the field with the Diamondbacks? Like, do you think giving him was too much to get Puck?
I don't think that giving him alone was too much to get Puck. I think that I am higher in some ways on De Los Santos than some people. But I still don't think that just De Los Santos would have been too much to get Puck. The thing that kind of bothered me was giving Andrew Pintar as well. But I really think that, and this is one of these crazy things about the way that circumstances have worked. We're going to evaluate this trade very differently now in the aftermath of Christian Walker's injury, which thankfully it only seems he's going to be out for a few weeks. But obliques are very strange things. So it's entirely possible that Davison De Los Santos is playing first base in Miami and Josh Bell is playing first base in Arizona in September. And how they perform under those circumstances, that will make a big difference as to how we evaluate this trade. But that's not fair because that's not the circumstances that the trade was made under. I thought De Los Santos was going to likely be the starter at first base next year. I wasn't really comfortable with that completely. He's so young. He does not have the defense. He does not have the leadership ability that Christian Walker has. And the biggest problem with De Los Santos is one that you don't see mentioned, I think, often enough, is that he hits about half of his batted balls on the ground, which for a player that has 70 power is not what you want. And that's something that is going to have to be worked on. And it's much better if he works on that in the minor leagues than at the big league level. So while he is the one player that was traded away that might turn into a star at some point, I think that's fair.
Yeah, like I know we all would like really like me, Gabe, and Brett. We were all very high on De Los Santos throughout the year, but like he had a huge just roadblock in front of him to make it up here. Like Christian Walker, like yes, he can play third base, but if you look at his games in the minor leagues, he didn't really play third base that much. He was primarily DH in first base. And we don't need a DH right now because that platoon that Hazen signed with Jock and Grichuk has worked out so well. Like it's like I'm really surprised as to how well that worked out. And the fact is, there was the report that came out is that they wanted him to spend more time on his defense, and he didn't want to. And we know how important defense is to Torrey and Mike Hazen. Defense is it's so important to them. So the fact that he wasn't willing to work on it, they're like, let's just sell high now and get what we can. But yeah, I think we could have gotten it without trading Pinter, and I think Hazen probably tried, but they're like, we need a little bit more. So Marlins were very busy.
Yeah, the Marlins were very busy, and it illustrates the difference between the systems. I think De Los Santos was 14th in our system on MLB Pipeline, and he goes up to 5th in the Marlins system. It's a big difference. They definitely had a need there, but the thing with Pintar that I don't think people realize just how good of a year he was having. He was transitioning into center field. He was playing in the Northwest League. He had a 919 OPS, which sounds good even before you adjust it for park values. In the Northwest League, which is a very pitcher-friendly league, that's a 160 WRC plus. He was the best batter in the Northwest League over the first half of the season. For that matter, there are just 7 big leaguers that have a WRC plus of 160 or higher, and most of them are not playing premium defensive positions. Now, he's not going to sustain that going into the big leagues. No one does. That's not the way that it works. But he went from a guy that was always hurt and probably not going to pan out to a guy who was the best hitter in his league and definitely earned his promotion, and then unfortunately got hit in the hand by a pitch, and he has not been the same since, but hopefully he will be coming around, although unfortunately not with us.
Yeah, and like I said on our last pod, I'm not really going to be like checking on it. Like, I'm not going to go look at his stat line, but if something pops up on my social media feed, I'll be happy for him. But it's not going to be like there are some players that check. Like, there are just some guys that a lot of us check. Like, just, it's like a bad ex. You just want to see how your ex is doing. So, Gabe, do you have any final thoughts on either De Los Santos or Puck?
I just think it's a good trade for both sides. I mean, that's just what you want out of a trade. You don't want to fleece teams. We always talk about Hazen, and his fleece shots, but at the end of the day, you want to have good results, because when you have good results, then teams are going to want to trade with you because they're going to see, oh, well, last time.
Did we lose him? We may have lost him because he looks frozen on my end. So this is a bummer. Oh, hold up. Is he back? He's frozen. Well, that's a bummer. That is for sure. We'll just stall here a little bit. But no, I think going forward, for me, Puck's going to probably be one of those guys that's in the A bullpen with like Ginkel and Thompson. I just think that his stuff is better than Mantiply.
Oh,
like,
yeah, beyond a doubt.
Like, Mantiply to me is very like soft contact, and when he misses, things just like we saw what happened. I think it was Saturday against O'Neal Cruz. It wasn't a bad pitch. O'Neal Cruz is just not human. Just absolutely murdered that ball. So I think Gabe is good to come back here. So Gabe, we kind of lost you there for a second. So why don't you just kind of start over?
Well, the main thing was just that when you have two trades work out, like, your teams are more willing to trade with you, because if you're just sending, quote unquote damaged goods over, and they're, whatever prospect you send them doesn't pan out, then they're going to rethink, trading with you, because they're going to be like, well, last time we traded them, we gave up a big star and this prospect didn't turn out very good. But if it's in the case like with the Varsho trade and stuff like that, where you see both sides are benefiting, then they're more willing to trade again, because they're like, yeah, well, they gave us a good player and we gave them a good player. Like, win-win is what you want out of these situations, because again, you want teams to be able to trade for you, because there's certain guys and certain organizations where you're going to get a lot of damaged goods from them. And so that's why you see certain teams just give up way more prospects than they normally would, but just because they need to sweeten the deal.
Yeah. So, I think AJ Puck's going to, and I know a lot of people at first compared it to the Jake Diekman deal from a few seasons ago because he's a lefty, but I'm like, Jake Diekman didn't throw as high as Puck does, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people looked at his overall season stats and like, I'm not impressed. I was like, yeah, that's because they tried him as a starter and it was bad. Like, it was bad when he was a starter. But if you go back and look at his splits as a reliever this year, it's been dynamite. And we've seen it so far. Like, he hasn't been almost pretty much perfect in his 2 outings that we've had. So Very impressed with Puck, so hopefully that continues to go well. Let's move to today. Today we made, I would say, a minor move and a somewhat big move. So yesterday, Christian Walker had to leave the game due to an oblique injury, which we found out today. He could, the quote was he thinks 3 week-ish. So for me, I was thinking, yeah, it's probably September 1st. Christian Walker's probably going to be out closer to September 1st. And then that scared me because I'm like, they're going to bring up Pavin. And I don't know if I could handle Pavin Smith starting every day for a month. Because we've seen that before, and I'm not a fan. I'm fine with spot starts every now and then, but long-term Pavin at first base scares me. They traded for Josh Bell. They literally had to give up nothing. It's a player to be named later in cash considerations. I believe they send the Marlins $2.5 million, basically, which is basically half of what he has left this year. Josh Bell this season's been very up and down. The first 2-ish months, he wasn't really good. He's been really good the last 2 weeks. Marlins designated him for assignment. And it seems like Josh Bell gets traded at every trade deadline. Because he was involved in the Juan Soto deal to the Padres. He went to the Padres that season. I believe he was traded to the Guardians in 23. But he's most notable. Sorry, he signed with the Guardians, and then he was traded to the Marlins at the trade deadline last year. So he's just making his rounds. This is third time he's been traded at the trade deadline. For a month, I'm fine with it. He's a better option than Pavin Smith for a month. He is a switch hitter, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But I got really scared when I saw that Christian Walker's out for a couple of weeks. I'm like, oh boy. Another injury to a major star on this team. But Preston, what are your thoughts on the just Josh Bell trade? If you want to call it a trade.
Well, I mean, it is. And they announced it as cash considerations or a player to be named later. So
okay.
There is a chance that it winds up being a player. My suspicion, because this is the way that it works a lot of times, is that there is some sort of performance level that if he reaches, it becomes a player. But I don't anticipate that being anyone who we would value very highly as having a future role. I'm not as nervous with Pavin Smith as most Diamondbacks fans would be.
But that's just us here on Dbacks. All three of us are not big Pavin Smith fans, and we both know two people that are so high on Pavin Smith. So it's just more of a bit more than anything.
Well, I watch primarily the minor leagues, and he's certainly been hitting the ball better than he has in the past. And so that makes me a lot more comfortable than I would have been previously. Still wouldn't want him to be the only option. And so I think it was a necessary move. It's kind of one of those things that if Christian Walker gets hurt a week earlier, then, it may be one of those situations where you that trade with the Marlins works differently and you get him then instead of getting him now. But, you can't control the timing on these things. But I mean, I think it's good. As pretty much as soon as I heard that Walker was going for an MRI, I said they're gonna probably make a move and get Josh Bell because he was out there.
And it cost nothing. We didn't have to give up.
Cost nothing.
So yeah, and if it was a long term, Walker's out for the season type of thing, I'm wondering if they might look for another first baseman. But I think Josh Bell it's like a placeholder. It's yes, and they brought up I believe they brought up Pavin Smith today,
Yes,
right?
he's been recalled. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's going to be a split duty there. I wouldn't be surprised if lefties is Josh Bell because he's a switch hitter, and Pavin's right-handers.
And Bell has historically been better from the right side as well.
Yeah. I was actually looking at his splits here this season. He does hit better again versus right-handed pitchers. His slugging's about the same for both, so it's not like one side he slugs more. He just hits for average a little bit better. He hits 246 versus righties, 222 against lefties this season. So it's a little better.
Historically, he's done a little bit better against lefties than he has against righties, but it's one of those things. But my concern, to be honest, with Josh Bell is his defense. He is not a good defender. We have been very spoiled, and the Diamondbacks infielders have been very spoiled with
Walker.
One of the top. I mean, we're not just talking one of the top first base defenders right now. We're talking one of the top first base defenders easily of the last 30 years. He's in that group, and the drop off is going to be it's going to be a cliff. That's the concern there, and I think that explains the recall of Pavin Smith as much as platooning. You're going to see Josh Bell pulled for a defensive replacement in the late innings. It's going to happen.
Yeah, especially because we know Torrey is so big on defense. Like, he would rather put a phenomenal defensive player out there with subpar hitting, because it really is all about run prevention. If you have good defense, you're going to be able to prevent those runs. We've seen it multiple times this season where pitcher may not have made a great pitch, but defense bails them out. So, Gabe, what are your thoughts on the Josh Bell transaction?
If they would have gotten just Josh Bell like this, without Walker being hurt, I would be a lot better about it. Right now, I'm honestly really disappointed that this was the big move. And in general, just the fact that we got two relievers and Josh Bell, like, this is a very underwhelming and honestly disappointing trade deadline, especially seeing with the way that things have shaken out in the NL West. With the Padres got a lot better, the Dodgers got a lot better, the D-backs, they got better. They improved in some areas, but I felt they needed one more bat, and Josh Bell ain't it. And I felt like they should have gone for Vladdy Jr. The issue with him is always just going to be, we don't know what the Blue Jays wanted. We don't know how many, cornerstone franchise type players that they would want for Vlad Jr. because he's playing out of his mind right now. He's looking incredible, and he's a guy that you're going to take, defensive miscues from, because he's going to hit a home run the next inning. He's going to drive in a guy, with a double in the next inning. Like, he's such a good offensive player that you don't mind, same like with Bryce Harper. They're both such similar players in the sense that, like, they're so good offensively that you're going to take, just a random error here and there. And Josh Bell, like, they tweeted out some of the stats that he's doing better, but it's like the last 2 weeks he's doing better. How long is that sustainable for? Is he going to keep, batting 300 plus these next few weeks, or is he going to be, 220, 240? Like, at least for the next 3 weeks, it's fine for whenever Walker comes back. But if his injuries extended a little bit longer, I don't feel good about having Pavin and Josh Bell being the solution there. I hope I'm wrong. I pray to God that I'm wrong in this situation, because I know Josh Bell can be very, very good. He can be very streaky. Hopefully, we get the good streak of Josh Bell during this next month or so that Walker might be out, because, like we said with Davidson, that's all we need right now. We need just a good week, a good few weeks out of one guy, and we're going to be winning a lot of games. And after that, just depends on what happens. But, I mean, it would be good he's a good guy to come off the bench in the playoffs, but as of right now, for the next few weeks, I'm a little worried. I wish we'd have gotten one more bat, and unfortunately, maybe the cost was too high. We won't know until either later on today or tomorrow, whenever they give, a press conference with Mike Hazen. Like last year, we were wondering why didn't they do much other than just a couple of moves. Hazen said, like, yeah, they're asking for Alec Thomas. Like we said, no, and most phone calls this time probably is the same thing again. First things they're asking for is Alec Thomas or Jordan Lawler, like guys that we can't afford to give up right now. Especially, like I said, uh, if this team was the Philadelphia Phillies, where they have a window that's closing, you make that trade. But right now, this window is just opening. They're still very young, and you're not going to mortgage a lot of, your future stars for a few weeks or a few months out of Vlad Jr. or any other guys.
Yeah, and I think what we really saw, this was a huge seller's market season. Like these teams that were selling had all the power because a lot of them, they didn't have to trade some of these guys. Like, and we'll get into it later. What the Padres gave up for Tanner Scott, I was like, yeah, no, there's no way we would have given up any of our top prospects for that. But the thing is, that's what San Diego does, is they feel like they're like one or two players away. So they will basically sell the farm to get a player that they feel like they need. I just don't know if adding another decent bullpen arm was what they needed. I felt like they needed like at least like a Jack Flaherty, who did go to the Dodgers. So we will get into what the rest of the NL West did, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the final move that was made today. And he didn't have to go very far. Dylan Floro, former Dodger, by the way, was traded from the Nationals to the Dbacks. So he just had to walk across the hall. He pitched last night. He wasn't the one that messed up last night. And Dylan Floro has had a really, really good season. Like, he's not a name that would probably jump out at you, but he's had a really good season. Like, I was impressed. The big thing that jumped out to me, 2.06 ERA, and his whip's at 1.05. So I think we got another A bullpen guy, which is what we need. Like, we could only last so long with basically high leverage of Ginkel and Thompson only. That for me, I was like, just get like one or two more guys. That way we don't have to see Miguel Castro or Bryce Jarvis in high leverage situations. And you don't want to put that pressure on Justin Martinez either. So I'm glad that we got two more arms, one from each side, the left and the right. And we didn't have to give up a lot either. We gave up Andres Chaparro, who we signed this past offseason, who's been tearing it up in Reno. But again, it's Reno. Take that with a grain of salt. We see everyone rake there in the Pacific Coast League. So, Preston, your thoughts on getting Dylan Floro and the loss of Chaparro?
Well, I think I very much agree with what Gabe was saying earlier, talking about win-win trades. I will say the Cat apparently loves this deal. As soon as he started talking about Dylan Floro, I had the Cat jump up behind me. But I think this is the definition of a win-win deal, not just for the organizations involved, but for the players as well. You have Chaparro, who, unless the Diamondbacks put him on the major league roster, is going to be a free agent again at the end of the season. And now he's going to get to go to a team that is getting really dismal production from third base. Now, he is not a good defender at third base. I don't think he's any better than Davison De Los Santos there. It's definitely a struggle. But they are able to play him there and see what they have. And, yeah, if his future is first base DH, they can work with that. They can see how he does at the big league level, and he has the opportunity. Floro gets to come join a pennant race, and he has experience there. He's pitched in the postseason. You've already mentioned what team he pitched with, so I don't have to bring that up. But this does help. It may stabilize things. I'm not particularly high on Floro sustaining the production that he has, simply because relievers with low velocity don't generally work that well all the time. And I mean, we've seen that over the past few weeks with Paul Sewald. But it's a different look. It's something different. And Miguel Castro was DFA'd as a corresponding move. So,
oh no, I'm so heartbroken.
So that was just
No offense.
That was the 40-man and 25 or 26-man move to add Floro to the roster. So I think you'd have addition by subtraction, even if you didn't have a pretty good reliever coming in. So I think this is a trade that works well for everyone.
Yeah. Floro, I don't think it's going to be one of our high leverage guys. Unless like everyone else has been burnt out in the last couple of games. I feel like that's going to be Puck. I think that's why they made that move first, is they wanted to address we need another high leverage pitcher. That way we don't have to keep throwing out Thompson and Ginkel all the time. And maybe, depending on how they feel with Sewald, like we have made it pretty evident our frustrations with Sewald the last month. It's been a struggle, and it's just more of Torrey being the loyal guy that he is. He's not going to give up on a guy because he struggles, but just hindsight, looking at those games that we lost because of Sewald not being able to close it, we would probably be near the top of the wild card race, and we'd be even closer to the Dodgers in the divisional race. So it's just like, it's a bummer that you're like this close to even being even closer for that division. I still think it's within shot. Like, I believe 7.5 games over 2 months is very doable. Very doable, especially if we can get healthy in our starting rotation. Get Gallen to be the Gallen that we all know. Fott's been amazing. He just needs to get run support. Like, that's all Fott needs. Fott, just continue pitching the way you have, and offense, just get him 3 or 4 runs. Like, that's it. So, Gabe, your thoughts on Dylan Floro?
Yeah, obviously I would have preferred, a Stott or something like that, but anything is an improvement over Miguel Castro. And yeah, I'm not a huge Castro fan, but I will defend him in saying why they kept him for so long, just because he had a 97 mile per hour sinker. Like, if you get that under control, you can see why this team wanted to keep him. The unfortunate part is this year he was throwing that around 93 miles an hour, and it's just, if you're not locating it and it's coming in at 93, doesn't matter. It's getting hit out of the park every single time. But getting Floro there, like you were saying, the issue is just going to be the low velocity. When you're dealing with lower velocities in a reliever, you can get burned. The fortunate thing is that he is very good. He gets a lot of ground balls. He has that 2 ERA for a reason. So again, we don't have to burn Ginkel or Thompson or Puck on guys that come in the 7-8. Let's say this is the 7th inning. They're facing off the 7th, 8th, and 9th batter. You don't have to bring in Ginkel to strike those 3 guys out anymore. You can put in Floro. Floro's can get the job done. He's going to keep the line moving. Then suddenly you can set up the 8th for Ginkel, and then Puck can even get the 9th. We don't have to rely on Sewald anymore. We don't have to burn our top guys anymore. We have guys that can come in, mop up whatever job needs to be done, and keep our main setup guys in position. And again, we can rest a lot of these guys now. We don't have to put in Ginkle every single game anymore. That's the main thing that burned us in that Cubs series is that they use Ginkle, Thompson, and Seawald all 3 days. Same with Martinez. They use them all 3 days. And so by the time they got to Sunday, there's no other options. You had to kind of throw out Joe Mansupply out there. So, hopefully this rights the ship in a lot of ways. We could be talking about right now winning 23 out of the last 25 games or something like that if it wasn't for the bullpen. So the way we're moving right now, the way this team is looking, the way this offense is starting to click, and I know they're not facing, the greatest teams right now, but the fact that they're able to come back from these last couple of games, the fact that they got blown, these 2 games got out of hand because of the bullpen. Having these couple of guys there, I think it's going to really reinforce the bullpen, make him a lot better because we also brought Ciccone back up. This guy can throw 97, and apparently he was touching 99 consistently on the radar in Reno as well. So we have another high-powered righty in the pen, and the main problem with Ciccone was just first time through the order, amazing, perfect, like Clayton Kershaw out there. Then after that, he would just completely fall apart. So all we need Ciccone for is 1 inning, get the 5, 6, 7 guys up, then put in Floro 7, 8, 9, then just follow a script, and then suddenly, the game's over.
Yeah. So I think it will be nice, not having to go like every game, Thompson and Ginkle 7th and the 8th. Like you said, if we're facing the bottom of the lineup, you could, and depending if it's on matchups, you could put Puck and Dylan Floro out there, and then really save Thompson, Ginkle, and Seawald for like September in those like really important games. Like get these guys ramped up and ready to go. But the team kind of did what Gabe and all of us were worried about, is that they're like, oh, we're getting Erod and Merrill Kelly back. That's like making a trade deadline deal for a starting pitcher. I would have liked another starting pitcher. I feel like another starting pitcher would have put me a little bit more at ease. But I think because rumor is Erod may not be very far away, like maybe a week and a half. So my only worry is that Erod hasn't pitched all season. How do we know he doesn't do what Jordan Montgomery did and took 2 months to really get into form and then fall apart again, which is what Jordan Montgomery has done? So that's my biggest worry with them relying on Merrill and Erod to be top form from their first start. Because we've seen Gallen hasn't really consistently put it together all season. Like he's had moments. So it's just a little bit of a worry for me.
I mean, we have 5 question marks right now when it comes to our starting staff. The only one I don't have a question for is Fott. But Gallen, Montgomery, Erod, Nelson, and Merrill. That's 5 question marks that you have in your rotation. Getting one guy, let's say it was a Flaherty. We know what he's been so far this year. Having him there, we're going to get out of him every 5th day. But right now, we don't know what we're going to get out of Gallen. Are we going to get a guy who's going to get blown up and go, 4 innings? Or is he going to go 6 innings, 1 or 2 runs? We don't know. Fott seems to be 6, 7 innings, 3 runs. That's, you can book it for Fott usually like that. Montgomery, we don't know. He's either going to pitch 7 innings, 1 run, or he's going to, be out of the game by the first. And we don't know we're going to get out of Erod or Kelly because, again, Erod hasn't pitched at all. Merrill was on a very good run, and he got injured. So, again, like how much can we experiment with these guys? We can't experiment a whole lot coming into the postseason because they have 2 months. They have 2 months to prove who's going to be out there, who's going to get sent down, who's going to be put in the bullpen. And with the way Brian Nelson has been going, like, how can you possibly explain to the fans that, like, yeah, this guy has, a 2.5 ERA over his last 10 starts, but we're paying Erod, so he has to be in there, even though he has a 6 ERA. Like, I don't know how you can justify those sort of moves when you're fighting for a spot in the wild card and even the division.
Yeah. I want to bring up this comment real quick. I think this is why we didn't make any big splash. Hazen knew, like, we have a couple of prospects that are really good. He didn't want to trade those because the rest of the farm system, and Preston, you can kind of go into that, kind of confirming or not, our farm system outside the top of the top guys is not really, there's not much there.
Well, I mean, there's the issue with what we have in the farm system is that there's really only one consensus guy that everybody agrees is a top prospect, arguably two. But Drew Jones fell off of a lot of people's top 100 lists after his struggles. Now he's put it together a bit more this year, but still you'd be selling low on him at this point. So you have Jordan Lawler and everybody else. There are some people that are really high on them. I believe Keith Law had Hansel Louise as a top 100 prospect, which is way higher on him than anybody else. Baseball America is still fairly high on Ivan Melendez, who many people have given up on at this point. And I'm sure that the opinions in front offices are as variable as that as well. But I think I really would classify the trade deadline as solid but unremarkable. And I think in a lot of ways that's the best kind. Yeah, it would be nice. It's always nice to have more, but you can wind up in trouble. Last year, you had Hazen traded away Chad Patrick for Jace Peterson, which at the time everybody said, well, we don't need Chad Patrick. You know, that's superfluous. Yeah, he's going to regress from what he's doing. He's got an ERA of 2 at Nashville, and the underlying metrics don't support that. He's going to regress. But we need him. You know, we needed him this year. And obviously Jace Peterson did not work out. And that was kind of one of those things that, you know, you had that feeling that we need this guy, or we need something. We have to make a move, and that can come back and bite you, even if it's not giving up top prospects for someone. I think if you could have acquired Vladdy Jr. without trading Jordan Lawler, you do that because that solves first base not only now but also for next year. But I'm quite certain the Blue Jays were not going to make that deal. Hazen already fleeced the Blue Jays once. You know.
If you ask Blue Jay fans, they will not agree, even though right now it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah, well, the fans may not agree, but I'm sure the front office probably would feel that way. And obviously, it's unfair to say that to count what Gurriel is doing this year against the Blue Jays since he was a free agent. But there's certainly been some good production out of those guys. Varsho may be the best defender in baseball, but you know it's we could use his arm in the outfield. That would be the one thing we definitely use his arm in the outfield.
Yeah, that's the one thing with our outfielders is if you they're not going to throw guys out. They're just, I mean, keep in mind Gurriel's arm is probably the best out of them right now, and he did throw a guy out last night. But yeah, like anytime Jake throws it, or Alec or Corbin, I'm like, yeah, you just go.
Here's the situation. Pavin Smith, it's between Pavin Smith and Gurriel for the best arm in the outfield, and first base is his best position.
Yeah.
It's it's a little bit problematic, and that affects things in all sorts of different ways. But it's one of those things. Different people have different metrics, different evaluations, and that's the way that Hazen likes to go about things. It's worked out very well. But I will say he's got a couple between Jack Hurley and Drew Jones who have very good arms in the minor leagues. So hopefully we'll see some good armed outfielders coming up over time.
Yeah. I know a lot of people in I think it was April and May were all like, oh, Drew Jones is a bust. I'm like, y'all, hold up. You can't hold him to the same expectation like Jackson Holiday. Yeah, Jackson Holiday ran through their minor league system like it was nothing. But if you look now, I feel Drew has had a decent minor league season so far. And again, he's 20 years old. We don't need to rush him up here. Corbin came up very quickly too, but those are the exception, not the rule. I would rather Drew take his time because he has genetics on his side with who his dad is. So I know he's going to be a great defensive outfielder. I don't know if he'll play center. I don't the way Alec plays center at Chase Field. It's just so great to watch. If he's playing and a ball's hit in the outfield to anywhere from left center to right center, I'm that ball's going to be caught. I have no doubt about it. When Jake and Corbin are there, I don't know because they don't really read the ball or take the right routes, but their speed can make up for it. If you gave Corbin or Jake speed to Alec, there'd be no ball that he wouldn't get. Alec isn't fast compared to those two, but he takes the right routes, so he makes up for it. So why don't we just kind of quickly go over what the division did? Sorry, Brett, we're going to have to do this. Tanner Scott does get traded to the San Diego Padres. They gave a lot. They gave up quite a bit for a rental. And that's what I was worried about. I wanted Tanner Scott. I didn't want to sell the farm to get Tanner Scott for a 3-month rental. That's my only thing with rentals is I don't like giving up a lot if there's no guarantee that the player's going to come back next season. And I don't know, but yes, I do agree. Tanner Scott, really, really good. And it's not like they just got Tanner Scott. They got another pitcher in Hoeing, but Padres gave up their number 2 prospect, their number 4 prospect, and their number 5 prospect. That's quite a bit. Now, their number 4 prospect and their number 5 prospect in Adam Mazur and Graham Pauley have both played at the major league level this season. They haven't looked exactly great. And I think the only reason they brought up is the Padres didn't have any other options at the time. Their depth on the major league roster just didn't really allow them to. They're we got to do something. So they go ahead and make that move. So I'm trying to pull up the Diamondbacks if we want to compare. So that would be we trading away Yuman Lin and Gino Groover for Tanner Scott. No, I would not have done that. No thing. We all here on the pod, we're big fans of Yuman Lin. So I was no. Now, if they wanted to give up those guys for a guy with control for a couple of seasons, then I'm a little bit better. But for a guy for 3 months, for me, it's too big of a risk because what if you don't go far in the playoffs? You gave up those 2 big prospects. So, we'll see if that works out for him. But Preston, what were your thoughts on kind of the haul that the Marlins got for Tanner Scott?
I felt like it was quantity rather than quality. I do think we had the opportunity based on some things that Hazen said after the trade for Puck. Sorry, yeah. After that trade, they did obviously talk about Tanner Scott, but the Marlins wanted too much. So, that was that. As far as he wasn't going to give up what the Marlins wanted. I'm much more concerned about how the Dodgers seem to never have to give up anything and can get whoever they want. Although I will say, Flaherty fits right in there because he's had some back problems this year, so fits right in with the rest of the rotation.
Yeah, with those injuries. So, Gabe, your thoughts on the Tanner Scott move?
I feel like the Padres are in a win now mode, and they've been in a win now mode for the last few years. But we've seen what happens when teams go in these all out, win now modes. Is that after a few years, if they don't do anything in the playoffs or they don't even make it to the playoffs, like the Padres have in the last few years, and with the Mets, like they go all in and then they still miss the playoffs. Like we can't afford to be like that. We can't afford to give up big name guys just to miss the playoffs because again, the D-backs technically aren't in the playoffs right now. Well, I'd have to check the standings. I know there's some games earlier, but as of right now, they're not in the playoffs. So, mortgaging the farm for guys that we just have for a couple months, like it's not worth it. At least for the Padres, they think it's worth it right now. But they also have most of their team under control for the next, 65 years or something. So that's kind of a problem that we have right now. It's just we have certain guys that we're going to lose control of, which Walker in a couple of years, 2026 Gallon, Barrel. Like there's a few guys that we're going to not have anymore. So I think this is a move for next year. Because we won't have Gallon, we won't have Merrill. Who knows what we're going to have with Walker. This is a move that you make later on down the line when you feel like your window is closing a little bit. Like, I don't think their window's going to be completely closed at all. Like, I think they're still going to be competing for a while. But meanwhile, you have two legit aces. This is a move you make. And right now for the Padres, this is the moves that they needed, especially with Darvish, I think, not going to pitch for the rest of the season or something. I know it's something weird, but this is what they needed, and this is what they felt was needed for it to get done. And I kind of feel bad for the prospects just because the Marlins are just all over the place. They just are in that perpetual mode of selling and somehow not competing. I'm like, what are you guys doing with all these prospects for? Like, you have all these guys and then nothing happens. Like, hopefully all these guys can eventually help the Marlins, get to the playoffs, but we'll see.
So yeah, in terms of the Jack Flaherty deal for the Dodgers, they gave up their number 8 prospect, Thyron Lorenzo. He's a catcher, first baseman. And then they also gave up Trey Sweeney, who's their number 22 prospect. So again, not any of their top prospects, and they seem to do it like they reload and develop that farm system like so well. I'm always like, how are you always making these big moves year after year after year, and it just seems like you're not even hurting your farm system. Like it's just mind-boggling to me. So, Preston, you got any last thoughts on the trade deadline overall and what the Diamondbacks did?
I think they're in better position than they were, and they're a half game out, and they're one game behind the first wild card spot. That's it. It's crazy the way that it's going. I'm not gonna, it's like I don't feel like trading for a reliever is a huge great thing, but also other people trading for a reliever doesn't worry me so much, because Tanner Scott's only going to affect us if we're behind going into the ninth inning. That's not something we should have to worry about. So I was just glad nothing crazy happened. Glad that we got to keep most of the guys, and I think, and this is something that I've said in the past, but I'm encouraged by how our player development and how our work on the international market has started to pay off. That's how the Dodgers have done what they've done.
Yep.
They have hit that international market so hard and done so well there. And the Diamondbacks had not. And, Mike Hazen had to completely build the international side of things when he took over. And we're starting to finally see the fruit of that. That's Justin Martinez, and Jorge Barosa and Gilbert Diaz. Those are guys that that the Diamondbacks would not have had in the past, and they're going to work out well, I think, for us in the long run. So that's the kind of thing that they have to be doing, and I think they're doing a good job of it.
Yeah, like there's so many gems in that international market. You have to go and find them. So I'm glad that Hazen started to do that a couple of seasons ago. It just takes time, but as long as you go after it, I think we're going to see results from it. Just continue to go forward. So really excited about that. Gabe, any last thoughts?
Just again, I wish we could have made a little bit more of a splash move, like getting the Vlad Jr., but it is what it is. We got what we got. We just have to work with the guys we already have up in the majors and even in the minor league system. Pavin. So I'm not as huge of a Pavin hater as you, Brandon. My issue with Pavin is more
because a good friend loves him. So it's just more of a gag.
It's just the way that he's used. I think Torrey just doesn't use him right. He's a bench off the bat, and I think that's the main thing he should be, because can be very good. He has a great eye for the strike zone. He walks a lot. The issue is, I just think his swing path is too long and just doesn't get to the ball in time. I think if you were to shorten his swing, he would get a lot more hits more consistently. So that's why, sort of like a Cody Bellinger type of thing. But the thing is, Cody Bellinger just has a lot faster swing than Pavin does. So he's able to get away with that longer swing path. But he's been crushing in Reno. Maybe he fixed his swing. I haven't seen the video. Seems like every night the Reno Aces are tweeting out that he hit a home run or hit a clutch double or triple. So hopefully now we get a really good Pavin that we can rely on day in and day out.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't a big splash, but there is a bright side. Dodgers did not get Tariq Skubal. So and it sounds like the Tigers really weren't planning on moving him unless they got like a massive haul, and I just don't think teams were going to do it, because that's the type of pitcher that you build your team around. And have they traded him? How do you explain that to your fan base? Basically, you're saying we're not ready to win now, so we're going to trade away most likely the future AL Cy Young. So I just was glad he didn't go to the Dodgers, because we all were like, yeah, he's probably going to go to the Dodgers because the Dodgers seem to make that big splash. But again, I don't think there was any big splash this trade deadline. I don't think there was any move that we're all like, what? What the Astros gave up for Kikuchi, it's not a splash. I think it's a way overpay. And the Tanner Scott deal, there were a lot of pieces involved. I just think it was quite a lot for a decent reliever. So we'll have to see how this all transpires over the next 2 months. like Preston said, we're a half game out of the final wild card, and we're only a game back of the first wild card. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth. So we are very excited to be along for the ride. Don't forget to check us out here tomorrow as we recap the National Series. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see y'all next time.